Hi, hello everyone, and welcome back to Overly Produced, the podcast where I, Lolise, discuss iconic moments in reality TV or just moments that have been living rent-free in my brain. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and on Spotify, and I keep saying I'm gonna get on Apple Podcasts. I will, I promise. I will get on Apple Podcasts. I'll figure it out. Today, we're going to be discussing one of the biggest stories to rock housewives, and specifically the Real Housewives of Orange County. And that is when OG of the OC, Vicki Gunvalson's boyfriend, Brooks Ayers, faked cancer. Or did he? Let's dive in. But before we dive in, let's do a little bit of background on who this is. So, David Brooks Ayers, or Brooks, was born in Mississippi on January 1st of 1968, which makes him a Capricorn. Before appearing on the show, Brooks had several children with, I think, 2 different women, both of who he owes a lot of bad child support to, and has apparently been arrested because of his lack of payments back in 2010, to which Vicki at the time wrote a letter to the judge asking for leniency, and this was while she was still married to her ex-husband Don. A few months after she wrote this letter to the judge, Vicki then filed for divorce from her husband Don. And it's in season 7 of Real Housewives of Orange County that Vicki introduces Brooks to the ladies, and she introduces him as her new boyfriend. And they date between 2010 to 2015. And after the two split, years later, he was back in court with more child support stuff. The mother of at least one of his children did an interview on 2020 about how much of a deadbeat dad Brooks really is, which is pretty ironic because a huge part of conflict between Vicki and fellow OC housewife Gretchen Rossi was that her boyfriend, Slade Smiley, yes, Slade Smiley, that Slade Smiley from Orange County season 1, that Slade Smiley, he was seen as a deadbeat dad by Vicki and Tamara. So season 7 starts off with Vicki fresh out of her divorce from Don, and she introduces Brooks to the ladies and to the world, essentially. And she introduces him as the man who is now filling up her love tank. Housewives always have to have some kind of weird phrase for love tanks, their love bubble. It later comes out that both Vicki and Don were actually cheating on each other, and towards the end of their marriage, it was just, they literally had no communication, and Brooks was somebody that Vicki was seeing while she was with Don, with Brianna even meeting him before they apparently started dating, allegedly. Brooks was even in Vicki's intro card at the beginning of season 7, so he's like her family now. Vicki tells us she met Brooks at an insurance conference, and the relationship started off as long distance because he lived in Mississippi while she continued to live in the OC. Don also still lives in the house at this point in time because the divorce isn't actually completely finalized, but both Vicki and Don travel so much that they're really not in the house at the same time that often, which was kind of something that was a big problem in their marriage in the first place. But that also means because Don lives there, she doesn't want to bring books to the home because she feels like that is disrespectful towards Don. When Vicki first introduces Brooks to the other ladies, they're very welcoming, yet cautious because they're, being very protective over Vicki, especially her BFF Tamara. Because Tamara wants Vicki to find happiness after divorce like Tamara herself has. We even see Vicki and Brooks do a double date with Tamara and her new boyfriend at the time, Eddie, to Catalina Island, which I really only know about Catalina Island from an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000 where they watched a terrible B-movie called The Catalina Caper. Now, the dynamic within the group of ladies has shifted a little bit. Sure, Tamara and Vicki are still friends, but there is a bit of a rift forming between the two of them in the name of Gretchen Rossi, because Tamara has been kind of making amends with Gretchen, and they've been becoming friends. There's even an exchange of a friendship bracelet between them. And honestly, I kind of like them being friends. I think they're better together. But this rift allows Brooks to move in a way and turn Vicki against Tamara, helping, fuel that mistrust that Vicki is starting to get. And I think this is because Brooks knew that Tamara would see right through his BS, because she did. Not to mention that Vicki was constantly ridiculing Gretchen's boyfriend, Slade, for being a deadbeat dad and, not paying child support, not being there for his children, when it turns out that Brooks has been doing the exact same thing. And Gretchen does point this out in a literal screaming match that her and Vicki have at the 80s Bunko Night, which, side note, I actually really miss them doing Bunko Nights because I think it was just a super fun little kitschy thing. I think the last time they did Bunko Night was when Vicki found out her mom passed away, so I kind of understand why we retired that. But this 80s Bunko Night was also on the heels of Slade's comedy show, where he references Vicki looking like Miss Piggy, who Miss Piggy's a literal icon. Tamara also, she sees Gretchen's point about it being hypocritical because Brooks has had the same stuff, so Vicki shouldn't really be holding this against Slade. And actually, Tamara went even harder than Vicki did, and the previous season, she even spoke to the mother of one of Slade's children. Now, we see Brooks constantly love-bombing Vicki with daily positive affirmations, giving her greeting cards. I don't think my husband has ever given me a greeting card. You know, just all these other things, which makes Tamara, like, side-eye Brooks a little bit. She wants Vicki to be happy, but she does see this constant love-bombing and how Vicki's, like, bending over backwards for him. But he makes Vicki happy, and she wants Vicki to be happy, so it is kind of difficult for Tamara. Vicki's own daughter, Brianna, does not like Brooks either, as she had met him before Vicki and Don even filed a divorce. But Brianna knew he was a scumbag right from the get-go. And as Vicki's romantic relationship with Brooks bloomed, it caused a major strain on Brianna and Vicki's relationship. That and Brianna just running off and eloping with her boyfriend, who Vicki had not even really met before. But I don't really want to go into Brianna's husband, Ryan, and like that whole mess. The strain between them was another thing that allowed Brooks to really weasel his way into Vicki's life and kind of move everybody away. Her best friend and her daughter created distance, perfect for Brooks. Brooks even made her son Michael uncomfortable by trying to get kind of deep with him, but Michael just kind of shut that down quickly. He was like, yeah, no thanks. I don't really want to talk about that. Cool, whatever. At the end of season 7, Tamara's true feelings about Brooks come out in an explosive fight with Vicki at Heather's name-changing party. The tipping point of this argument being when Brooks accuses Tamara of giving Vicki the evil eye. I have to say, I somewhat enjoy these women fighting over an evil eye. It's so, old world to me, and it reminds me of something that Sophia Petrillo from the Golden Girls would fight over, and then she would hold a grudge for 50 years, or until, her deathbed. At the end of the season, we find out that Vicki and Brooks broke up, and then they got back together, and then they broke up and got back together, and it seems like this is, a cycle of their relationship that will continue to carry out for the next few seasons. Season 8 starts with Vicki telling all the ladies that they broke up, but they're still dating. So the ladies don't really believe her. They think they're still really a couple, that she just doesn't want to admit it because of a bad experience before. And we do see Brooks several times throughout the season, at dinner dates, or he goes to Lydia's salsa party. One reason that they're being wishy-washy on if they're dating or not dating is because Brianna, she still doesn't like him. She just had her baby, and she and her husband are currently living with Vicki, with the agreement being that Brooks is not welcome in the home, is not allowed to be there, and is not welcome around Brianna and her baby. Now, Vicki is in major Nana mode. I think that's what she calls herself. I think that's her grandma name, Nana. And she cannot bear the thought of not seeing her grandson, so she obviously picks him and her daughter and her family over this deadbeat. Smart. But she is still totally seeing him on the DL. There is a lot of talk within her family about Brooks, between Brianna and her husband Ryan and Vicki's brother Billy, and just how much they don't trust him with Vicki and how they feel like he's a con artist and he's trying to take her money. OG housewife Lori Peterson is back in the mix a little bit this season because it's Tamara's wedding season, so she had to come out of the woodwork for a couple scenes. She had a lunch with Gretchen where she, shared a lot of gossip about Vicki, and then goes wedding dress shopping with Tamara and the whole group of girls. Oh, she really just came to spill a bunch of tea about Vicki and Brooks. The Vicki stuff we kind of already knew. It's the whole multiple partners thing. I've never had multiple partners in my life, but it was that they were cheating and stuff. But what Lori shares at the wedding dress shopping is pretty devastating to Vicki. While Vicki maintains that they are still on a break, she gets very upset when Lori informs her that her daughter's friend, who I believe is a cam girl, has been basically hooking up with Brooks. It's maybe a sugar baby situation. And Vicki's crushed. Rightly so. At the reunion for season 8, Brianna airs Brooks out. She does not take her foot off of his neck for 1 second, and we love to see it. Here's some things that Brianna shared. She first learned about Brooks in 2007 while Vicki was still married to Don. Brianna saw an email from Brooks professing his love to Vicki. He told Brianna's husband Ryan to start beating Brianna, and there's even a recording of him saying this. At the reunion, this makes Lydia so upset that she actually leaves the stage. Brianna apparently has an entire list of all of the shit that he has done, and she keeps it in her wallet as a constant reminder. And it seems at the end of the reunion, Vicki and Brooks have broken up. Season 9, we start with Vicki's divorce being officially finalized. Brianna is pregnant again and is preparing to move to Oklahoma because that's where her husband Ryan is being moved to because he's in the military. But when they get there, he's then going to have to leave for deployment, which is very hard on a very pregnant Brianna. Vicki and Brianna do some counseling where they discuss their strained relationship over Brooks, but I honestly didn't see any change or resolve from that whole scenario, as Brianna still wants nothing to do with Brooks and won't come over to visit her mother if he lives there. It doesn't even matter if he's not physically present. If that is his resident, Brianna does not want to be there. Brooks isn't as involved as much as Vicki is with focusing on repairing her relationships with her family and the ladies. They do, however, take a couple's trip to Mexico with new cast member Shannon Beador and her husband, David, who is also a scumbag. In an attempt to help Shannon and David repair their crumbling marriage, they even arrange some alone time for them. We see them go on a double date with the DeBros as well. And he does accompany Vicki to newest cast member Lizzie's Laguna dinner from hell. And Vicki and Brooks are the only ones that show up to Lizzie's birthday party, which was weird because Vicki doesn't even like Lizzie and they were on a party bus alone with her. Overall, season 9 Vicki and Brooks were a little more low-key. It's a real are they, aren't they, but they're mostly really just trying to downplay the relationship to everybody. Which then brings us to season 10, which is the real meat and potatoes of this story. We get a new housewife in season 10, Miss 30-year-old Megan King Edmonds, the new wife of former retired MLB player Jim or Jimmy Edmonds. I don't know what baseball fans call him. I call him Jimmy Dad Jeans. Brianna now lives in Oklahoma and Vicki has visited a lot. With Brianna out of the house, Brooks has then moved in, which Brianna hates. And Brooks was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma 4 months prior to filming. Vicki says that he's been very sick, but he doesn't look like he's sick. Brooks says he's getting treatments of chemo at City of Hope, which is a hospital in the area. But though he's getting chemo, he's medically cleared to travel to Mexico with Vicki and party, which makes zero sense because I can't imagine an oncologist telling a very sick stage 3 cancer patient, yeah, go ahead and travel out of the country, have fun, try not to get sick going down to Mexico. Brianna, who is a registered nurse, thinks he's lying as she has seen people who have what he has, and he doesn't look like any patient that she's ever seen with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Brianna is not the only person that is questioning Brooks's diagnosis. Earlier in the evening, Eddie actually coughs bullshit while Tamara is on the phone with Vicki asking about Brooks's treatments and if it's safe for him to travel. So we see right away in season 10 that people are unsure if this is even true. When she comes home, Vicki throws a Mexican themed party complete with a whole tequila bar. And there, Tamara talks to Brooks about his illness, and Brooks is very confident and says that this is highly curable, which I did a quick search, and for his age group, it's like a 50-50, and it goes down to 30% if he's in his 60s. I don't really know how old Brooks is, but he seems very confident that his stage 3 cancer is no big deal. What? Stage 3 is very advanced, and there's only one stage left afterwards before treatments can become completely ineffective. So his lack of concern about his diagnosis is suspicious to Tamara immediately. Something Brooks did not expect was Megan King Edmonds, or Miss Megan Drew as I think of her in my head. She moved to the OC to be with her stepdaughter Haley, who's actually helping take care of her own mother, Leanne, who is dying of cancer. Megan's husband, Jim, it's his ex-wife, she's undergoing extremely aggressive treatments with her battle against cancer, and these treatments are not working for Leanne. So while Brooks is pursuing his cancer treatments and showing us his journey on camera, he didn't actually expect that somebody else would come into the show who is also currently deeply involved with cancer treatments. Combining that with Megan's knowledge of chemo and Brianna's background, it casts a lot of doubt on Brooks' story. We see Brooks talk about getting treatments in chemo, but we never actually see him getting the treatments in chemo, or we don't see him after the chemo treatments, which chemo just devastates your body and it makes you very sick in the coming days afterwards. But we don't see any of this on camera. Vicki just tells us that that experience is happening, but she never really elaborates on it either. We do see him consult with a homeopathic person who suggests a fruit juice only diet, coffee enemas, and literally touching grass to treat lymphoma. Stick some coffee up your butt and touch some grass for fucking cancer. Not to mention that if he's only drinking fruit juice, he is not going to get all the nutritional benefits that he needs to keep his body strong and to fight cancer. And fruit juice is a bunch of sugar. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't cancer just love sugars? And repeated coffee enemas can apparently cause seizures, possibly heart or lung failure too, potentially even death. So this guy who says that he has stage 3 cancer, that he has a 50-50 chance that he could die from, is willing to stick coffee up his ass that could also kill him. This woman that comes to Vicki's home is a serious wackadoo. Shannon's in her 2nd season now, and she's actually in good with all the ladies. Shannon's also had a lot of health issues in the past, and is very versed in Western and Eastern medicines, and she likes to use combinations of both. So when Brooks is diagnosed, Vicki calls Shannon immediately and asks for help, and Shannon actually drops everything to find him the best doctor, which she does find him the best doctor and is able to get him a quick appointment, and he doesn't go to it. In season 10, Shannon hosts a bunko night at her home. Love bunko nights, but this bunko night, I think, is our last. Unfortunately, Vicki is told by production to call her daughter Brianna from one of the landlines in Shannon's home, because the way Shannon constructed her home made it completely a dead zone, I'm sure. And she uses a landline in Shannon's craft room. Shannon's house was so big, she literally had a room just for crafts. And Brianna tells Vicki that Vicki's mother has passed away. It's a really sad scene to watch. I even get emotional just thinking about it. Just losing your mom like that, and just losing your mom, period. So difficult. And Vicki just collapsed. She loses it. The woman really rally around her. But this also makes the ladies kind of handle her with kid gloves as well. I think Vicki's devastation over her mother makes her more blind to Brooks's cancer story and causes her to cling to him harder. I also wonder if he manipulated the situation behind the scenes. I might die too. I don't want you to be alone. Whatever. I don't know how you would manipulate that, but I feel like he could do that. On a bowling outing with Shannon and Tamara, they ask Vicki about Brooks and how he's doing, and Shannon talks about her research and what his treatments are and her concerns, and she's even called doctors about potential treatments for Brooks. Tamara then asks Vicki if she ever goes with Brooks to any of his doctor's appointments, and Vicki tells her that she has been to some of his chemo appointments, but not to any of his other doctor visits. And Tamara tells her, you need to go to these. You need to know what's going on. You need to be in the loop. This is your partner, right? Megan, Shannon, and Tamara meet up, and of course the topic arises, and Megan asks if Brooks is still doing chemo, but Brooks is deciding that, whether he'll continue or not, because Brooks thinks that the chemo will kill him before the cancer does. Shannon expresses frustration that he won't even go and see her doctors, and Tamara thinks it's a bad idea to stop treatments after you've only done 3 rounds of chemo and you're stage 3. Episode 11 of season 10 is where all of the shit starts to hit the fan. Brooks tells Vicki about a doctor visit that he had while she was gone. Convenient. He met this doctor for a consultation, and this doctor had the same cancer as Brooks, and he made his own concoction, and Brooks says that he cured his cancer without doing chemo, just this concoction, some super secret formula that this doctor made, which is obviously BS, because otherwise this doctor would be making international headlines for, making this concoction that reverses cancer without chemo. Brooks then says this was all after this doctor did chemo for 4 years first and had been in remission for 7 years. Like, I think that's a big piece of information that you're leaving out. Leaving all that other stuff out is extremely misleading here. Then we get the infamous sit down with the psychic. Tamara sets up this little meetup with this guy. It's her personal psychic. A lot of women on Housewives have personal psychics. Should I have a personal psychic? So Heather, Megan, and Tamara, and they all start asking him questions about Megan's potential future baby, how many babies she'll have, things like that. And then when Tamara starts to bring up that a friend of theirs, their partner has cancer, he quickly says, I don't see it, which really shocks the three ladies who can't believe that somebody could be faking cancer. And Megan tells them that she actually knew somebody at her old job that faked cancer, and they faked it for insurance money and attention. The women are all reeling, and Tamara is not sure that they should even share with anybody what the psychic said. The next day, Tamara hosts a booty boot camp at Cut Fitness, and all the ladies come. After the class, Brooks arrives because it's his birthday, so they want to have a little mini celebration for him on his birthday, complete with a cake and sake shots. Two things that he probably shouldn't be having, with cancer. Both Shannon and Megan clock that Brooks drinks the sake. Tamara then asks Brooks, hey, what's going on with your treatment? And, he says that he is pausing chemo. And he then explains that, the whole story about the doctor, and he says he had the same cancer I had. Have. And Tamara notices this possible Freudian slip immediately. And then Brooks specifically talks about this antioxidant, resveratrol, and that it's going to be used in this concoction to blast cancer cells. Megan asks Brooks if his oncologist is worried about him stopping chemo and if something bad could happen. And Brooks says in front of everybody that his oncologist actually wanted him to start doing more aggressive chemo. He wanted him to come up to 3 times a week. So Brooks is directly going against his doctor's orders when he's facing potential death. Makes total sense. As you can see, Tamara, Heather, Shannon, and Megan are all uncomfortable with what he's saying. And Vicki says that she is just here to support him. And Tamara tells her that she needs to start going to his doctor's appointments. And Vicki says, I do go to his doctor's appointments. Tamara calls her out and says, no, you said you only have gone to his chemo appointments. And he's only had 3, so you've only been to a minimum of 3. Vicki then says, look, I have been working hard. I made this whole color-coordinated binder to put all of his treatments, his logs, his results, and it's all there and nice and neat and organized. And I'm pretty sure that was probably empty. It had nothing inside of it. She just wasted a bunch of money on a bunch of plastic that Brooks probably threw away. Then Tamara's son Ryan arrives with his new little baby, and the conversation around Brooks and his treatments, diagnosis, whatever, ends, and Vicki is then able to sneak across the street back to work. Once everybody leaves, and it's just the 4 ladies, Tamara, Megan, and Heather, tell Shannon what the psychic said, and then they began to dissect what Vicki and Brooks had said, just now when they were all hanging out, and how they basically lied. They lied several times. Shannon tells them how she spent a whole day trying to help Brooks, but then he never took her help. He gave her several excuses as to why, one being he had an appointment with her doctor, but then on the way, he got 2 flat tires, and then he never rescheduled the appointment. When they tell Shannon what the psychic said, she is very upset and is still upset when later that evening she goes on a double date with Vicki and Brooks for Brooks's birthday. She's still very much in disbelief by what the women at the gym have said. So at dinner, David, Shannon's husband, orders a cocktail, and surprisingly, Brooks orders the same cocktail, which then sets off alarm bells in Shannon's head. He even orders a second one. Though she doesn't actually tell Vicki what was said, she is clearly upset, and in the bathroom, she does tell Vicki that something was said about Brooks, which then just sends Vicki into a total rage, and she takes Brooks and they storm out of the dinner. I'm not even sure if Brooks or Vicki even ate food. And David Bador is stuck with the check, which he's a fucking asshole, so just spend his money. The next day, Tamara goes to Vicki's and asks about the dinner with Shannon, and she assumes that Shannon has told Vicki what was said because Vicki tells her that she stormed out of the dinner midway through. Vicki clarifies that Shannon did not tell her, but in the car, Brooks mentioned how everyone was asking him about his treatments. So then Tamara decides to tell Vicki what the psychic said after they all agreed that they wouldn't. Come on, Tamara. It's like Vicki says, though, telephone tell Tamara. Vicki takes this info as Brooks is or will soon be cured. And Tamara then tells Vicki that it was actually Megan that told Shannon what was said, and that really sets Vicki off. Vicki then rages on Megan for believing a psychic when just a few episodes ago, Vicki actually had a psychic in her home, and she believed that she was actually speaking to her recently passed mother through this man. This is the kind of hypocrisy that makes me love-hate Vicki, because she's delusional to think that she's not doing the exact same stuff, but it's also kind of funny to watch that delusion a little bit. Vicki then shoots Megan a text telling her, shame on you for talking about a man dying with cancer. Megan then tells Heather about these texts, and they discuss how weird it is that he still hasn't gone to see Shannon's doctors. Doctors who Megan actually really wants to get Leanne, Jimmy's ex, into, because these doctors are world-renowned for their treatments of cancer. Megan is saying that she wasn't saying that he didn't have cancer. The psychic was saying it. But Megan is the one that's going to chemo and treatment with Leanne, and Brooks isn't doing any sort of treatment at all. So to see him just stop while Leanne can really no longer get chemo anymore due to it causing internal bleeding in Leanne's body, it's heart-wrenching for Megan to see somebody who could, in theory, be getting treatment and be turning it down. Heather hosts a lunch in her new home, Chateau de Bro, which is actually still under construction. And this is where Vicki and Megan really face off in person. It kind of starts quietly with Shannon, quietly asking Megan if she had called the doctors that Shannon recommended for Leanne. And Megan is so incredibly thankful to Shannon, which is, surprising because they do have a very tense past. They didn't start off on the right foot. Megan then breaks the seal with Vicki and asks her about being upset from the whole double dates night that she had with Shannon, and because she knows that Vicki heard what the psychic said, which Vicki is immediately on the defense with Megan and yells at her, "Don't you ever question if he has cancer again, I'll take you down!" And brings up Megan asking Brooks all these super invasive questions at Cut Fitness. Megan clarifies that she was asking questions because Leanne, someone she cares about, is also dying of cancer, and she can't receive treatments anymore. So Megan was trying to get clarity and understanding as to why Brooks is quitting his recommended treatments and not taking advantage of Shannon's amazing contacts. Vicki says he's going to City of Hope, which is where Leanne is trying to get into. And during the argument, Vicki says she has been there while they are putting the chemo in Brooks's arm. Hearing this, Heather shoots Tamara and Shannon looks because Vicki previously told them she doesn't go into his appointments, which then Megan points out that she's actually been to 2 out of 6 of his appointments. This guy's only had 6 doctor's appointments for stage 3 cancer? What? Vicki says he's doing his new treatment, the resveratrol, which Vicki cannot explain what that is or how this would work in theory because it doesn't work. Resveratrol is an antioxidant. It's not like they could fight cancer all by themselves, especially stage 3. During this back and forth, it is established that Tamara knows nothing about cancer treatments, medical testing, different diagnostic things. She has not really looked at a lot of medical charts or information. She doesn't know the different kind of imaging that would be done with cancer or most medical things, really. And to be fair, a lot of people don't until if you work in the medical field or you've had a lot of medical procedures, you are more likely to have seen this stuff and know how to read these things and know what the different imagings are doing and looking at. But that's not Tamara's wheelhouse. That's not something that she's been involved in her life. And it is important to remember this specific fact for later. Vicki then talks about this new treatment that Brooks is trying, and Megan says that she has researched this method and there is no medical proof or backing that would ever work. Vicki then just resorts to calling Megan a little girl and telling her to go away because she hasn't been through life like the rest of them. She's only 30 years old. Megan then reminds her that she too is currently losing somebody close to her to cancer, which then Vicki belittles Megan's relationship with Leanne, and this brings Megan to tears. Megan points out that Vicki is just angry at her because Megan's really just expressing concern is really what it is. And then Vicki calls her a little girl, so Megan then in turn calls her a bitter old woman, which makes everybody else at the table gasp, because they're all around the same age as Vicki too. Megan is confused as to why Vicki and Brooks are keeping all these secrets about Brooks's treatments, because cancer treatments aren't usually secrets, but Vicki just deflects and doesn't answer and gets angry and then eventually just storms off to leave. Heather and Tamara follow her in an attempt to calm her down and explain to Vicki where everyone's confusion is coming from. Brooks told them that he was going to chemo every few weeks, but doctors wanted him to go more. Vicki says, yeah, they wanted him to go every day, but he didn't want to. Tamara tells Vicki that that's pretty scary that he's just stopping chemo like this. But Vicki says that she has to support him and this is what he wants to do and he does want to beat this and he does want to live. So Vicki just leaves and Megan continues to cry. Heather comforts her and tells her that Vicki and Brooks, that isn't Megan's battle, so it's time to lay off. She needs to lay off. And you can still kind of hear Vicki like screaming in the background as she's leaving, and Megan calls her a bitch, which she is. At this point, I'm unsure if Heather's like non-Real Housewife friends are even still there. As the dust, figurative dust, not physical dust from Heather's construction settles, Heather comments on Vicki's reaction to all that and that it was really over the top, even for her, and Tamara agrees. In a following scene, we see Vicki having dinner with her son Michael, and she brings up Brooks and the ladies and Brianna, and that she wants them to like him. And Michael tells her that she doesn't need to convince him, like, he likes Brooks, it's fine. Michael says that Brooks has always been nice to him, but Michael also just keeps everything very surface level with people. Like, even his relationship with Vicki is very surface level. She didn't even have Michael's address for a long time. Like, she did not know where he lived, which I don't blame him. She would just randomly show up. She flew all the way to Colorado or something to surprise him at school. Tamara and Eddie are doing a launch for their gym's new YouTube channel, and they are throwing a sex party to release their sex tape on YouTube. It's like a sexy workout, like quickies or something. I don't know. It's just an excuse for Tamara to throw a very raunchy themed party. So it works for her. It's very on brand for her, considering she's also going to be getting baptized this season too. When inviting Megan, she specifically asks Megan not to bring up Brooks or anything involved with cancer or chemo at this party. Even though Megan agrees, she does end up in a very heated argument with Vicki at the bar while wearing a really terrible wig. Vicki then calls her evil and predicts that Jim and Megan's marriage will end within 5 years. They actually ended up divorcing 7 years later in 2021, which, I mean, maybe the divorce started 5 years, so maybe Vicki is psychic. Oddly enough, Megan then went on to marry former President Biden's nephew, and they were married for 6 months. And Megan now said in a recent interview that she forgets about that marriage. It didn't even feel like a real marriage. Lady, you have kids now. What? This argument with Vicki then leads to Megan and Jim having an argument on the way home, and he's mad that she involved him in this argument with Vicki. In the limo, Jim tells Megan that she needs to butt out of Brooks and Vicki's business. Vicki goes out to Oklahoma to visit Brianna, and Brianna says in a confessional that she would love to come home to OC, but not while Brooks is living with Vicki. They are planning an upcoming OC visit, and Brianna mentions having to get a hotel because Brooks is still living there. Vicki flies into a rage because she cannot fathom her daughter, Brianna, coming and staying at a hotel instead of her home. She tells her that Brooks won't be there. He can go somewhere else. He can go get a hotel, whatever. Brianna says, I'm not going to kick a cancer patient out of their home, out of their bed. But she's also setting very clear boundaries that she does not want anything to do with Brooks. And as long as he is living there, like I said, he doesn't have to be physically present in the house. She will not be staying there. Vicki is very angry that Brianna would say all this, especially on camera, and is trying to force Brianna into the house so they can close the door and they can have this conversation away from cameras. But they still have their mics on, so we can still hear everything. Brianna calls her out for Vicki preferring for Brianna to look like the bad guy in this situation over Brooks. And Vicki is yet again choosing Brooks over her own daughter. Shannon, Heather, and Megan go out for dinner, and of course, the topics of Brooks and his cancer, faking cancer, whatever, comes up. Heather says, of course, everyone is now beginning to question it. Megan then drops the bomb that she has gone into a major Megan Drew mode and did some serious research. She called the doctor that Brooks said he was seeing, and she pretended that she had cancer and she wanted to see him for this treatment. The person that she spoke with on the phone told her that she would need an oncologist, and this doctor doesn't treat cancer at all. Shannon's head is spinning from this information because every new bit of info that comes out makes no sense. Shannon called her friend who is apparently head of the lymphoma department, and Shannon was able to get him into a very quick appointment. It was a very last minute fluke situation, and he missed it. He told Shannon that he had 2 flat tires. This is after they asked Shannon for help, and then they throw away all the work that she did to get him in. And it's very upsetting for her, especially because people keep asking her, why hasn't Brooks seen your doctor? And she doesn't have an explanation for them except for he had 2 flat tires. Later on, Megan is preparing for Shannon's Aries party as she, Vicki, Eddie, they're all Aries, and where she knows Vicki and Brooks will be, and she is filling Jim in on some more research that she did, which, he loves it. She found 2 blogs written by Brooks's exes, and this blog said that he said he had cancer in the past, but they were suspicious of the diagnosis, which Megan took as he faked it before and he's doing it again. Megan even found his ex's phone number through an old college friend who coincidentally happened to be from the same small town one of these women were from. And she tried to reach out to the ex, but she initially couldn't get in touch with her. At the party, the ladies are all gossiping, and Shannon even begins to express confusion about Brooks's cancer story. Then Megan tells the other ladies about the blog that she found and how the ex commented that he didn't have cancer back then, and how she tried to reach out to her, and then she did actually eventually talk to her. Heather and Tamara both say, yeah, we actually heard about this a year ago, but we didn't really think anything of it at the time. Brooks then sent Jim a text message because Brooks's ex messaged him to let him know Megan was snooping around. So Brooks knows that they all have questions, but he is not willing to give them any sort of true answers. Heather shares with the women that she knows the doctor that Brooks claims to have gone to, and he actually did mention that Heather probably knew him. And Heather does. This doctor does cosmetic treatments. Heather went to him for reducing cellulite, which doesn't add up. A cosmetic doctor does not practice oncology or do any sort of cancer-related treatments. A plastic surgeon doesn't know much past the basic medical stuff that they learn in medical school. That's not their area of expertise. Vicki arrives right as the ladies are gathered around talking about her and Brooks, so they quickly disperse. It's like when you turn on the light and cockroaches go away. At the party, Brooks pulls Megan and Jim aside so that he and Vicki can talk to them couple to couple. He asks Megan what her motivation is behind doing these deep dives on him, and she tells him she's not the only one with questions, and she is also not the one who said he was faking it, but his stories have a lot of holes, and they don't add up. Like the whole Shannon of it all, which Vicki tells them they didn't ask Shannon for help. And Brooks maintains that he was going to go to that appointment. Like, when you got around to it, like, it's very low priority on your to-do list. Like, it's some sort of chore that you don't want to do that you're putting off. It's cancer. You don't just get around to it being going to see a doctor who specializes in the kind of cancer you claim that you have stage 3 of. Come on, dude. Megan questions him about quitting chemo instead of continuing it while he's just doing his supplements. Brooks says that he's had family members who have had chemo and still died. And you know what? I'm not even sure I believe that, to be honest with you. Because if that was the case, if I saw a family member dying from cancer, I'd be fighting so hard to not let that be me. He went to 3 rounds of chemo and his doctor wants him to go every day of the week. That's not even a real fraction of how much chemo your doctors are wanting you to get, allegedly. They both agree that he said he's taking a break from chemo. Megan just thinks that it's weird. Vicki questions why Megan thinks that's weird. Vicki says that's what his doctor wants him to do. No, Vicki. Brooks told the ladies that his doctors wanted him to get more aggressive, and you told the other ladies that they wanted him to go to chemo every day. Both Brooks and Vicki are just saying whatever they need to try and shut people up at this point so they won't talk to each other and connect the dots. Vicki interjects the cancer he had when he was with his ex was skin cancer that was on his nose, which I'm not an oncologist, but I know skin cancer is pretty common on the nose, and I've had a lot of clients who have had that in the past and they've had it removed, and it leaves a pretty decent scar because skin cancers aren't just little flat things on the surface. They can actually be sometimes very large things, kind of like icebergs. It's small on the surface and it's large underneath. They usually leave scars unless you get a very nice expensive skin graft, which this guy couldn't even pay child support. I'm pretty sure he wasn't paying for cosmetic surgeries, but I don't see anything like that on his nose. Tamara ends up hearing that Brooks told Megan to consider the source in reference to Tamara repeating something Vicki said that Brooks said. And it becomes a very large fight because she has really been trying to support Vicki and her friend in all of this against their friend group. Heather sits down with Vicki after the blow up with Brooks and tells her that she supports her and she supports Brooks and she knows all the talks around his cancer, and Heather herself has joined in because the doctor that he claims to have been seeing is the doctor that Heather saw for cellulite treatments. Heather asks if Brooks is being duped because you don't go from treating cellulite to treating cancer. Vicki says he's still doing his resveratrol and he's getting ready for chemo again, which is literally the first time him doing chemo again has been mentioned. In all of these other conversations of why did you stop chemo? Why did you stop chemo? If he was going to be doing chemo again, why didn't he say, I'm going to be starting chemo again soon? Vicki just saying something else, making up a lie to get people to shut up. Heather tells Vicki everything that they hear about this sounds shady, and she asks, who is lying in this? Because somebody is lying. And if somebody is telling Brooks that they can cure cancer in 4 months without chemo, they are lying. Vicki tries to say that he didn't say that, except at Cut Fitness, he told the ladies that this doctor cured his own cancer in 4 months with this resveratrol concoction, and he was going to do the same thing with Brooks. Heather tells Vicki things are just not adding up, and that's why everybody is so confused about this. Meanwhile, Terry is outside with Brooks, and he casually asks if he's drinking, and then he quickly corrects himself and says, of course, you're not drinking. Brooks tells him while on chemo, no, but he did on his birthday. He says he isn't tonight, which I'm skeptical of. Heather then tells Vicki that if he's sick, then just have him show his lab work. Like, he's got to have a crap ton of labs. Vicki refuses, which is stupid because if the lab work existed, it would shut everybody up. Surprisingly, though, Vicki is way calmer with Heather than she is with everybody else. Probably because Heather is a doctor's wife, and I think Vicki has more respect for Heather than any other woman in this group. Except for I don't think she respects the fact that Heather was a stay-at-home mom for a while. Vicki is always very insulting of stay-at-home moms. I think it's because Vicki was maybe a little jealous that she didn't get to be a stay-at-home mom. I think it's also, like I said, because Heather is a doctor's wife, and then Vicki says too much to Heather. Heather will know if what she is saying is true or false. Vicki then gets up and leaves with Brooks. Megan tells Shannon Vicki said they never asked for Shannon's help, which makes Shannon really mad because she spent an entire day trying to find the best doctors for Brooks. Heather then fills in the other ladies about her conversation with Vicki, and they all compare the lies that Vicki had told them that night. Shannon is now siding with the rest of the ladies. Shannon says that Vicki is too smart to not know that Brooks is lying to her, and Vicki's stories keep changing too, so Vicki is lying for Brooks. Tamara does think it is possible that Vicki is duped, as Vicki can be vulnerable at times, and she just wants love so bad. She wants to be in love so bad that she'll overlook all flags. And right now, Vicki is wearing her rose-tinted glasses, so she cannot see the red flags. The next day, Tamara goes to Vicki's and tells her she is not on anyone's side at all, but all this talk is going around and is making her question if Brooks is lying or not. Vicki says again she is not going to be showing Brooks's medical records because he doesn't need to do that. Well, if he wants to prove that he's not lying about having cancer to the world, yeah, he kind of does. Vicki pulls the "what if he dies? Will that prove it to everybody?" card. I think this is Vicki showing her sensitivity to the possibility of losing him, like she just recently lost her mother, but it's also a very manipulative thing to say. I think she's like really holding on tight to Brooks and believing whatever Brooks tells her, and then maybe like filling in the gaps herself, which then later allows Brooks to lay some blame on Vicki for the ladies when they are like confused about certain things, because like he's lying and she's lying, but his lies are more concrete in a sense. Tamara comments that Brooks has had a lot of influence over Vicki as well, just in other things too. Tamara and Megan meet up and they work out at Cut Fitness. Then Tamara fills Megan in on her convo with Vicki. In her confessional, Tamara says that she gets why Megan is like so involved with this and invested because of what's going on with Leanne. And Megan predicts to Tamara that in 90 days, Brooks will announce that he is in remission. Later, Shannon and Vicki meet up for lunch after her Aries party. Shannon expresses to Vicki that she's struggling with, all these stories from Brooks and all the gaps and holes and people coming to her with questions. She says to Vicki, "You always say he's fighting for his life, so why wouldn't he explore other options and go see her doctors?" Vicki says he is fighting for his life, except he isn't, or he would be going to every doctor that's recommended and to this amazing doctor that Shannon has found. And there wouldn't be people like Shannon with a bunch of questions. How does Vicki not get this? And she says that he has his own team of doctors that he is working with. Well, Brooks isn't listening to this team of doctors because remember, he stopped doing chemo and all of his treatments. But right, he's fighting for his life. Okay, Vicki. Vicki must have forgotten that we also have seen a spouse on OC die of cancer. In season 4, Gretchen Rossi's first season, her fiance Jeff was battling cancer, getting regular treatments, and having long stays in the hospital while she went to Bass Lake. And then he did pass after the season finished filming. We as an audience, even if we haven't seen someone close to us in life pass, we have seen it on this show, how physically exhausted Jeff was when they went shopping for motorcycles. He had to take a break, how fragile he looked when he came home and he was with his children. He even looked exhausted sitting in a chair back in Michigan, just watching his children play in the lake. Cancer and treatments for cancer really take it out of you. They deplete everything. And the ladies and their spouses all agree that Brooks looks healthier than ever. Then we are back at the lunch with Vicki and Shannon. Vicki continues to twist stories until she yells at Shannon that she's done, when all Shannon wants is clarification and for Vicki to stop twisting stuff and lying. Shannon says she just wants proof. It's damaging Brooks's reputation, and all they need to do is bring out one piece of paper, because that piece of paper could actually get everybody to stop. Telling everybody to stop is obviously not working. It's making people talk more. We then get a scene with Brooks and Vicki meeting up with the woman who told him to drink juice and stick coffee up his ass. And now we're in like a office. And this is after we had previously gotten like a little commercial blurb thing where she was instructing them on how to touch grass, or what she calls earthing, where she takes him outside into Vicki's backyard to literally touch the grass. So they meet up with this woman at an office, and Brooks thanks her for setting this appointment up. He's gonna go to the appointment that this crazy touch grass lady set up, but not the appointment with the, world-renowned oncologist that Shannon set up. So a doctor comes out and she introduces them, and they go back into the office. So we know right away that Brooks has never met this man. This man has never treated Brooks. And I'm sure that this poor doctor has no clue what he just got himself into. He practices Eastern and Western medicine, and he specializes in rebuilding the immune system and detoxifying. So, not cancer. He's not an oncologist. I really don't think that somebody who has cancer should be going through body detoxes. Your body is already struggling enough. Brooks says that he has forwarded some records to the doctor, and the doctor says yes, that he got the results. And according to the PET CT scan he received, there is a large mass in the upper abdomen. The doctor then has him lay down on an exam table and does a very basic exam by pressing on certain areas in his upper torso, and Brooks doesn't even change for this appointment. But the doctor does say that he has a large mass and that is affecting the surrounding organs, and the doctor recommends a healthy diet and to remove stress. That's it. This doctor said he felt a huge mass and apparently looked at a PET CT scan and saw the mass and was like, yeah, just do Juice Lady's diet and the coffee enemas. Don't forget to touch some grass on the way out and you're going to be fine. We really don't get any sort of conversation about cancer or actual treatment options. We do get a quick peek at this horribly typed document that the doctor says, yeah, it's clear that you have a large mass unless someone faked this document. The doctor also never calls this mass cancer. And then, because the doctor just keeps referring to it as a mass. Like, okay, truth, I've had a lot of doctor's appointments and a lot of exams where I've been poked and had stuff, poked and prodded to find pains. I've had PET CT scans. I've had MRIs. I've had x-rays, all that. And I've had to bring these lab results and things back to doctors. And this was like a decade ago. But even then, I feel like most records were digital. Like, I would go to a doctor, they would give me a CD of the imaging with the results on it. So then I would take it to my doctor. My doctor could look at the results, but then also look at the specific imaging to see what the results are saying, to make sure that everything's being interpreted properly. I've also always changed into an exam gown before any doctor has examined me for any kind of pain or anything. I've also seen many medical records because I've also worked in doctors' offices, and none of them look like the record I just saw. No one types like that. But we will actually get a much better look at this PET CT scan document a little later. All I can say is in my years of doctor's visits and working at doctors, I have never once heard of a doctor even mention the possibility of a lab result being fake. So that also makes me think that this doctor was maybe a little suspicious of the results that he was looking at. Brooks is still on the exam table, and then they do an IV, which I'm assuming is this resveratrol thing, but they talk about deoxygenating the blood and putting it back in. So I'm not really sure what we're actually doing here. Is Brooks not getting enough oxygen, so his blood isn't oxygenating properly? Why are we oxygenating his blood? This isn't the resveratrol cocktail that we were told so much about? I really don't know what's happening in this scene. I mean, this doctor is probably like, even if this dude is faking illness, like, this IV thing I'm doing to him isn't gonna hurt him. I mean, I've done wellness IVs and B12 shots and stuff like that, and you feel great afterwards. And there aren't really any like negative side effects to your body unless you have like, you know, specific medical concerns. And you're probably pretty deficient in some of this stuff anyway. Like 75% of Americans are dehydrated. So that means 75% of Americans could benefit from an IV. There would be no negative effects. Later on, Tamara goes to Vicki's house and they go into a room that Vicki says she never uses. And you know that means that this is a serious business. We're going into the museum room. Vicki just looks super stern while Brooks then tells Tamara that they want Tamara's help. Brooks has had another PET CT scan and he wants to show Tamara the results so that she can basically go back to the other women and vouch for him. Tamara doesn't even know what a PET CT scan is. Remember, we've established this at Heather's construction luncheon. Tamara doesn't know shit about medical stuff, so she's never seen a document. And the document that she sees, though, is the same shittily typed document that he showed that doctor. So he got one over on a medical person who doesn't really, like, that doctor doesn't have a reason to think that Brooks is faking except for that fucking stupid document, but other people do. So if he could get it past the doctor, we can probably get it past Tamara. Tamara points out that the sentences have 0 spaces, and Brooks says it's a crazy typo, and he blames dictation for that. I would say that if a document like that got out, that could be a huge lawsuit if that was real. Like what if a mistake was made and a patient used a document like this as evidence of the mistake? He tells her that his cancer has gotten more aggressive, but chemo didn't work. But then he stopped doing chemo. So yeah, it won't work if you don't get it. In a confessional, Brooks, yes, because Brooks gets confessionals now, he says that he decided to show this now because he wants to shut them up. Vicki asks Tamara if she will now, have Vicki's back and vouch for Brooks with the other ladies. Tamara asks them, why aren't you just showing this to everybody else? Why not show everybody this document? Like, that's what makes the most sense, right? Because Tamara doesn't know what she's looking at. They don't really answer Tamara except for saying that this is a private matter and they don't want to go sharing this, except for you're on national television right now sharing this. Like, the camera's like zooming in on this. Tamara says in the confessional that she doesn't really understand what she looked at, so it really won't be easy to like do what they want, but she tells them that she's gonna do her best, and that seems to satisfy Brooks and Vicki. Heather and Terry are actually launching a skincare line on a home shopping channel. I'm not sure which one. And Megan invites Tamara, Shannon, and Lizzie over for a viewing party. It's a fun scene. Tamara calls in and it's funny as they boot her from the line for clogging it up because, girl, they need to make sales. Get off the phone. Terry, being the professional that he is, like, I'm a skincare professional too, so listing off all of the key ingredients that are gonna make the most benefits, be the most beneficial for your skin. And one of the ingredients that he lists is resveratrol, which, yeah, actually I have seen that in a lot of skincare as well. The ladies freak out and they fill Lizzie in on what this is about because she's not actually a cast member on the show anymore, but she is a friend. And they tell Lizzie that this is what Brooks says he is taking for his cancer now. Tamara then tells them about her little sit down with Vicki and Brooks and asks if they all got that group text from Vicki. There was a group text in which Brooks said that he had gotten a PET CT scan at Newport Imaging and it confirmed his cancer. Tamara then tells them about a document that they showed her which talks about large masses, which is news to everybody else, and Megan states that that's a really big deal in the cancer world to have a large mass. And honestly, it's kind of a big deal in like any kind of medical world. Like, large masses should not be growing in your body. And I'm like, why isn't anybody scheduling a surgery to apparently remove these like giant large masses from his body? If it's cancer and it's large, wouldn't it be best to remove it right? The bigger it is, the easier it is to see. I mean, I've had cells that they weren't even sure if they were cancerous or not, and they removed them to test them. So why is he just like letting this grow? Oh wait, is the fruit juice and the coffee enema supposed to be shrinking this? Or maybe it is just the touching grass part. Back to the ladies and this text message about his PET CT scan at Newport Imaging. Megan went into Megan Drew mode hardcore, and she tells them that she looked up Newport Imaging and it didn't mention PET CT scans on their website at all. So she called them and she asked them, and they told her no, they do not do them. They stopped doing them in 2008, and if somebody needed that, they would actually refer them to RHOC, a local hospital. She even called twice to confirm specifically that they don't do PET CT scans for the kind of cancer Brooks claims to have. That leaves the question of where the hell did this document come from, and why did they only show it to Tamra? Shannon questions this. Why show Tamra and not show someone like herself, Shannon, who has seen lots of medical records, or Megan, who worked in the medical field and medical sales, and she's seen a lot of medical charts. When you sell medical devices like implants and things, a lot of times you are in the surgeries when they're putting those things in, and so you do see a lot of people's medical charts. She'd be able to know right away if it was BS or not. But they went with Tamra, who has zero experience in this stuff. Megan flat out says that she thinks Brooks is making this report up, and it makes Megan mad because people are going through pain and he is possibly faking this, or at least putting forth fake documents. And Tamra, she feels played by Vicki and Brooks. Later on, we see that Brianna has finally come back to visit the OC with her family, and they are apparently actually staying at Vicki's house. Brianna says to her husband, the house feels really weird though, even though Brooks isn't there, and Ryan says it smells weird and he would rather be in a hotel. Vicki tells us in a confessional that she actually found out that Brooks moved in on Thanksgiving via a post on social media. Vicki did an interview and she spilled the beans online. She didn't even have the balls to tell Brianna herself. Tamra, Shannon, and Heather have lunch for the first time since Heather's TV appearance, and they are gushing over how great they did and how great the skincare was and how I think they sold out. And then Tamra says, not only does it give you great skin, but it also cures cancer. Heather's face when she says that is hilarious to me. Heather then shares with them what Vicki told her at the Aries party. And Tamra tells Heather about the fake document they showed her and was told that his cancer had grown. Heather asks, was this in that big binder that Vicki talked about? And why did they show this to Tamra of all people? Brooks is friends with Terry, Dr. Terry Dubrow, and he could definitely read it and know what's going on. Or Shannon, who would have an understanding of it. Or Heather would even have a little bit more of an understanding of it than Tamra. But everyone agrees that it's weird and kind of manipulative that they picked Tamra to show and relay this information. Tamra then tells them that she is going to be going to brunch with Brianna, and she promised Vicki that she would try and sway Brianna to like Brooks, but now she's unsure. Tamra does still meet Brianna for lunch, and she tells Tamra that it feels weird being at her mom's house because it's different now that Brooks has moved in. Brianna also shared with Tamra that none of her mother's family likes Brooks, except for maybe Billy, Vicki's brother. And that includes Vicki's mother, where Vicki had just stated that her mom had approved of Brooks before she passed. In my mind, I'm wondering if it was that her mom had just given up on trying to get through to Vicki like Tamra has and just accepted it. In my opinion, this is probably way more closer to the truth. What Brianna says next, though, is very confusing to Tamra. Tamra reveals to Brianna that she and most of the ladies have come to believe that Brooks is duping Vicki with this alleged cancer scam. Remember, Brianna's an RN, so yeah, she has noticed a lot of inconsistencies with stories and his treatment claims, and to her, a medical professional, it doesn't add up. Brianna shares that in the past, Brooks told her that he had pancreatic cancer. To which Tamara says, don't you die from that? And yes, pancreatic cancer is very aggressive. Brianna confirms that if he survived and is walking around at a cocktail party like your shit don't stink, that he's a medical anomaly and he would be a case study in textbooks. Like, she would have heard about him. When he told her this, she started asking questions about his treatment, his cancer timeline, who he went to, where he went, because she was really blown away by what he was telling her. Knowing that he had been caught because he didn't have any answers for her, Brooks then confessed to Brianna that it was pancreatitis, which is an inflammation of the pancreas, probably due to overconsumption of alcohol. Tamara then tells Brianna about the document that Brooks and Vicki showed her and how weird it looked, and how she was told the PET CT scan would not have been performed there, that Newport Imaging would have sent him to RHOC. Brianna confirms, yeah, he would have been sent to RHOC Hospital because they don't do imaging at Newport Imaging like Brooks is claiming, and that's because Brianna worked at RHOC, so I believe she would know what's going on in terms of who could do what. This lunch has confirmed to Tamara that Brooks is lying. Later, we get a scene of Tamara and Vicki doing a little private shopping trip to find outfits for Tamara's upcoming baptism, because yeah, that was a storyline this season as well. Sex party and a baptism. And Vicki tells her that Brooks had a bone aspiration test that week, but conveniently, it's while she's out of town. She's not going to be there. Vicki says that Brooks looks and feels great, so maybe he's actually in remission right now. Girl, didn't you just find like huge masses in his body? There's no remission if you have huge masses of cancer in your body. Like, Vicki doesn't even think that Brooks looks sick, but he did have blood work to confirm that he's sick. And then, of course, there's a test that they showed Tamara. Tamara then tells Vicki that she feels like Vicki and Brooks put her in a bad spot, because she didn't really understand that document and what it said, and she can't really provide answers to the ladies like they want her to. But, you know, she said that she did try to help with Brianna. Vicki gets angry and tells her Brooks won't be coming to her baptism now to avoid the ladies asking him questions. The day of Tamara's baptism has arrived, and all the ladies go, including some former housewives like the icon, the legend, Tammy Knickerbocker. I love Tammy. We do also get to see Lynn Curtin, who I also adore Lynn because she is just so spacey and funny. And like, her story on the show when she was on Housewives was just, man, crazy stuff was happening to her. Vicki brings her brother Billy and Billy's girlfriend Rhonda and a fashion designer. I don't know who that person is. And everybody witnesses Tamara getting baptized in a pool of a luxury hotel, and the surrounding area around the pool was turned into like a party cocktail hour. So this is also doubling as the end of season party. After Tamara gets dunked in the pool, she then goes and gets her hair and her makeup redone, and it's time to party. But while she's drying up, shit is going on down by the pool. Sadly, though, no one is thrown in. This is Orange County, not New Jersey after all. Initially, Vicki is avoiding the other lady. She does talk with Tammy, who is so far from removed from the dramas of the other women. Honestly, though, I would love to see Tammy Knickerbocker come back. Maybe even just like as a friend, but she is like such a completely different kind of housewife than the housewives we have today. You know, back when like the ladies were not surrounded by like glam squads and fake or borrowed designer stuff. Like, she was more of like a real person. And I don't know if I can imagine Tammy Knickerbocker having a conversation with Jen Pedranti or her and Shannon Beador. Okay, I do kind of want to see all of this, though. I do kind of want to see this. Anyway, can we maybe get like an Orange County OG, like legacy girls trip? Like Tammy, Lori, Vicki, Gina, Gretchen. Oh my God, Kimberly. Could we get Kimberly? Could we talk her into coming back? That would be amazing. Maybe even throw like Quinn in there, because Quinn was like really kooky. Like, I need Andy and a camera now. Anyway, let's get back to Brooks faking cancer. Vicki is avoiding everybody, but eventually it does all go down. Vicki feels the tension and she wants to give Tamara her gift and then get the fuck out of there. Heather tells Shannon and Megan that there is this story going around that one night Brooks was really sick from his chemo, so Vicki and Brooks called Terry and he sent somebody over in the middle of the night to give Brooks an IV. That literally didn't happen. And Heather says that Vicki's daughter, Brianna, is the one who told Heather this story. So I'm assuming that Brianna reached out wanting to confirm if this was true or not, because as a nurse, this sounds really fishy to her. And Terry confirms that he never received a call from him, and if he did, he would have told them to go to the ER, because if he is that bad after chemo, he's going to need more medical attention. Shannon then tells him, yeah, Vicki told me that same story too. So Vicki and Brooks are making up stories that are easily verifiable to be lies. This confirms for everybody that Vicki is lying for Brooks, and Megan speculates that maybe he faked it to gain sympathy and to get out of his child support payments. At one point, Shannon is discussing their concerns with Vicki's brother Billy and his girlfriend Rhonda. They're at the bar, and Rhonda, in some weird attempt to defend Vicki and Brooks, puts Shannon's whole marriage on blast and says that, nobody asked you for paperwork when you found out your husband was having an affair. Shannon saw red, which I totally understand, as Vicki was her only confidant in this, and Shannon had not actually shared this with many people. And then Vicki just went and told people that Shannon only met this woman one other time before this. Shannon tells Rhonda that she was there for Vicki and Brooks, and she offered so much help, but Vicki is basically just shitting on her now, while Vicki is, of course, saying the complete opposite, that they never asked for help, but that she's also hasn't gotten any support from any of her friends. Vicki is saying everyone is just confused, and it's all Satan's fault, because Satan loves confusion. At a fucking baptism. Satan is at Tamara's baptism. When really, Vicki, the confusion is coming from you and your boyfriend, because you guys make up a different story every time somebody asks you questions. Billy brings up the Brooks things to the ladies and how they're hurting Vicki with all of this, but he's obviously just as duped as Vicki. Vicki tries to make a quick exit when Tamara, finally gets down there, but Tamara's not gonna just let her leave without talking to her first. Heather is the first person to confront her in private on why she's leaving so soon, and where's Brooks? And what is this story about Vicki calling Terry in the middle of the night? Vicki knows in this moment she's been caught, and she mumbles like a guilty child that she doesn't know what Heather's talking about. Maybe Vicki was traveling, and maybe Brooks called somebody, which is a total lie, as she told her own daughter this story, who then asked Terry and Heather about it. While they're talking, Shannon storms over and confronts Vicki about what Rhonda said, and the other ladies follow. Vicki tries to leave, but she's stopped by Tamara and Pastor Mike, the guy that baptized Tamara, at the valet, and they try to talk to her, or try to talk her to coming back in and, coming back together, because this is a baptism. It's supposed to be a joyous moment. We could heal what's going on between Vicki and Shannon right now. Vicki declines and blames her stress on the other women and them attacking Brooks and her mom's passing. And then she says the iconic line, "I've been nailed to the cross like Jesus was, and I did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong." Vicki, you are so far removed from Jesus Christ. Please, let's not compare ourselves to Jesus, one of the most pure people to exist, theoretically. And she said this with a pastor present at a baptism. My God, Vicki, you're ridiculous. This erupts into a full-blown fight between Shannon and Vicki after everyone else has confronted her. It's Shannon's turn now. And Shannon confronts her with all the inconsistencies, like the stories with Terry, his paperwork, how Megan confirmed that where he's claiming to get treatments, it's not possible. Tamara even tells Vicki that Brianna has heard this lie about Terry. And Vicki's response to that is that she says, well, Brianna's a little shit stirrer. She calls her own daughter a shit stirrer because she told her a lie, choosing Brooks and his lies over her own daughter again and again and again, calling her a liar. Vicki, did you raise your daughter to be a liar? Because I doubt it. I feel like Vicki's actually a pretty strict but good mom, and there's no way in hell she raised a daughter to lie and manipulate like that. Tamara stands up for Brianna too, and then Vicki and her crew leave, her little reject fashion designer. In a confessional, Vicki says even if he is faking, what does that have to do with her? I mean, You are lying for him, though. You've made up lies and stories, and you've lied to the ladies about how involved you were when there was no involvement at all. The little card at the end of the show says that they broke up and Brooks has moved to Florida. Now, going into the reunion, the ladies and Andy want to hold Vicki accountable. It's very obvious that Vicki has taken something before the show. She does say at some point that she's taken a Xanax because she is like abnormally calm and kind of like almost unresponsive at times. She's so like dazed, she's just completely glazed over. We also see that Andy did a one-on-one interview with Brooks. Haley, Megan's stepdaughter, unfortunately lost her mother, Leanne, to cancer in between when they finished filming and the reunion. Part 2 of the reunion is where they really dive into the whole Brooks of it all. Brianna comes on and she says that she found out that Brooks moved in on Thanksgiving via an interview online. Vicki says the main reason that they split was because of the issues with Brianna, but not all the other shit that this guy pulled. Brianna lists off all the terrible things that we know about Brooks. He hit on her while she was pregnant at Vicki's birthday. And when she told Vicki, Vicki said that Brianna was lying because Brooks wouldn't want her. Tamara confirms this because she said Brianna called her after this and was crying. She was so upset and humiliated by what her mother said and how she stood up for this guy. Brooks told Vicki what to wear, what to say. He totally controlled her. Vicki would side with Brooks over her own family and friends, which we've seen. We've seen this. Tamara reminds Brianna of the time Brooks wanted to show her his junk. And he told Brianna that his nickname for his penis, or his nickname because of his penis, was Girth Brooks. And he would talk about Vicki's body in front of their family. And I'm sure that's just the stuff that Brianna can remember off the top of her head because she didn't whip out her wallet and whip out that list. Vicki confirms that she was in contact with Brooks the day before the reunion was filmed. And Megan says that she was too, because he had a lawyer send her a threatening letter. We also get a clip of Andy sitting down with Brooks. He couldn't make it to the reunion because Brooks is so important, yeah. He didn't even really need to be there at all, let's be honest. He's lucky he got a sit-down interview where he just got to spout a bunch more bullshit. He says Brianna is wrong about Vicki's family not liking him and that she's projecting onto him, and Vicki is Brianna's cash cow, not his. But that's why Brianna didn't like Brooks being around. She thought that Brooks was taking all Brianna's money. Brianna asked Vicki why she would lie about this all the time because she just wants her mom to be happy. But this guy, he is not it. And then part 3 of the reunion continues the Brooks conversation as the ladies really confront Vicki about all the lies and her trying to cover for him and the lying about cancer. How he also told Ryan to beat Brianna, he hit on Brianna's friends, how he later admitted what Lori had said a while back at Tamara's dress fitting. Well, that was true. He did date that cam girl, which Vicki continuously tried to downplay and say that she was like a poker waitress, which whatever that is. Tamara says that she and Eddie didn't believe he had cancer because a few years previously, when they had gone to Hawaii, Tamara and Vicki, they went to meet up with Heather because Heather was doing Hawaii 5-0. Vicki told her that Brooks may have cancer, and while she was on this trip, he was getting some tests done. Funny how Brooks's tests always happen when Vicki is out of town. Vicki later called Brooks when they were like on the way home. They were going to be boarding the plane, but he would not answer. Eventually they got off the plane and he did answer and he said, "I'll tell you the results when you're in the car alone." Putting her through mental anguish the entire flight. Like, a flight to Hawaii is not like a short hop, skip, and a jump. There's a lot of ocean to fly over. So she was a wreck during this flight. He put her through so much mental anguish just to tell her when she got in the car that he didn't have cancer. Vicki even says now that she still thinks that Brooks has cancer because she doesn't have proof that shows that he doesn't. Tamara then shares a story from way back in season 3, which was Tamara's first season. She and Vicki became very tight very quickly when Tamara joined the show. And back then, Vicki had shared with her that someone very close to her had cancer, and Vicki regretted never being able to make a real connection with this person because she was married to Dawn. This was probably the pancreatic cancer that he lied to Brianna about. Vicki was even thinking about leaving Dawn for this person, which this person was Brooks. We get more of the one-on-one with Andy, and Brooks says that he is still getting treatments, both chemo and holistic. And when asked about not seeing Shannon's doctors, he just dismisses her help and her doctors. In relation to the PET CT scan, he claims his test was done at RHOC, but the doctor works both places, hence the Newport Imaging letterhead. With the X's, he says that was just a miscommunication about him faking cancer with 2 women. He also said that Brianna is lying about him saying that he was a cancer survivor, that she heard that information from Vicki, and Vicki was wrong. Andy is back with the ladies, and he brings to Vicki's attention that Brooks has a pattern of using cancer to get at her. Heather asked Vicki if Brooks ever went to a real doctor because all we see on the show is, quote, these non-collegists. Heather totally rehearsed that, but it's still good. Vicki mentions a specific doctor that treated Brooks, but that didn't want to film, which Heather calls BS on as she knows this doctor. This doctor is actually one of her neighbors, and this doctor confirmed that he has never treated Brooks. Shannon then asks why didn't they film at City of Hope, because they do a lot of filming at City of Hope. They approve that. Heather says she's even filmed at City of Hope. Megan then takes Vicki to task because she lost Leanne to cancer. Vicki reiterates that she doesn't have any proof that he's faking or not. Shannon says she does, and she takes out her own medical records, a PET CT scan from Newport Imaging. She specifically points out the letterhead, how the document is formatted, and how it looks nothing like the thing that Brooks has. Not to mention the steps taken to transcribe the multiple people that proofread it before it even gets sent out. Shannon says there is no way a radiologist would sign off on this document being used. And each location has their own transcriber. It's not going to send it to another place. Brianna agrees and says the department is top notch, and they wouldn't let a document like what was shown get out. Back to the one-on-one, Brooks tells Andy that Vicki misspoke a lot about the things with his cancer, and she didn't know a lot about it. Well, it sounds like there really wasn't anything to know then, huh? He also says that Vicki and Brianna lied about the story about calling Terry, that didn't happen. And when Andy asks Brooks about Megan calling City of Hope, Brooks' response is to tell Megan to fuck off. He doesn't address the fact that she called and they said they don't even do those kinds of tests that he claimed to have done there. So he just doesn't really answer anything about Megan's finding. And he asks why he didn't show Terry his medical records. And Brooks says, in hindsight, he wished he had. And he says, well, you still can. You can still show him to Terry, and Brooks says he will. Back at the reunion, Heather confirms that Brooks never reached out to Terry. He never showed Terry anything. Vicki, through a roundabout way, says that she did fabricate the Terry story to a degree. To a degree, you fabricated the entire thing. No one came to the house. She never called Terry. She just wanted compassion and sympathy. Tamara asks why. Megan thinks Brooks was mad at her the most because he didn't think that somebody with a close relationship with cancer would pop up on the show. Megan thought she was going to have a strong ally with Vicki because they're both watching and helping their loved ones fight cancer. But instead, Vicki would just attack her. Vicki clarifies she never actually saw Brooks get chemo. She was just in the waiting room. She never once, in 4 hours, popped in to check in, ever. She just sat there on her computer. They all come to the conclusion that he must have had something on Vicki. She's too smart for this man to be lying to her and pulling pulling a fast one on her like this. Vicki does say that she's afraid of him. He has been verbally abusive, which Tamara and Brianna do confirm. And Brianna and her husband Ryan did actually witness physical abuse. Vicki says she did ask him in private to show records to the ladies, and then they would fight about it. Brianna thinks that Vicki just doesn't want to know the truth, and Vicki was very calm, and he does clock her for taking Xanax. She admits that she did before. Brianna says that Vicki has been like that for 2 weeks. Like, she's in a state of shock over this. Vicki keeps saying that she doesn't have proof that he doesn't have cancer. Vicki, the fucking proof is you aren't seeing any medical records. There's no actual proof. If anything, you, his partner, should have seen actual proof. People don't have records of things they don't have. But people who do have cancer look sick and have medical records showing that they have cancer, and they have lots of doctor's appointments, and a lot of times they get so sick they need someone to drive them to and from those medical appointments. But conveniently enough, he only makes appointments when you're out of town. But Vicki's gut is telling her that Brooks doesn't have cancer. After all her bullshit this season, that's what she says. The ladies are like, what the fuck? This whole reunion, 3 parts, she hasn't said this once. She has never said this. Honestly, I think this is just her lying because she's being confronted about all of this. And she thinks, like, if she just says this, she's going to get the ladies on her side again. Vicki says she was duped by Brooks. She saw red flags, but she looked past them, and she lied a lot. Brianna thinks that she was manipulated into lying for Brooks. Vicki then assures all of them that she is done with Brooks. Tamara ends the reunion telling Vicki she loves her, but she doesn't trust her like she used to. The next season is a lot of Vicki trying to apologize and getting the ladies to forgive her. The relationships between them don't really fully get repaired until, like, the next season, or maybe even the season after. After the reunion, they aired the full Brooks one-on-one. It's just a bunch of bullshit. He says that he saw a personal doctor of Jim Bellino. I was like, what? Where the fuck did Jim Bellino come from? Is that the doctor that was, like, blasting him with the resveratrol? The Bellinos are never gonna fully leave this franchise. They're always lurking somewhere. He blames the ladies for the confusion and conclusions on Vicki and her lying, or over-exaggerating to cover up, and he asked him why didn't he bring their medical records to the ladies to shut them up. He said he did by going to that doctor and showing Tamara the report. And he says, okay, well, why didn't you show that report to somebody who would actually understand it? Brooks said that it was because Tamara was a long-term friend and none of the other ladies would get it. I mean, Shannon, Heather, or Megan probably would have. Brooks says Megan just wanted to hurt Vicki, and she wasn't really serious with her concern. Brooks didn't see Shannon's doctors because show's production didn't line up. But did he actually get 2 flat tires? Andy also points out you don't need production to go to a doctor if you're potentially dying. Like, go to the doctor and don't die. Like, why do you need cameras? Like, isn't this your private stuff? Haven't you been saying this whole time, like, this is my private information, I don't have to share it? So why are you worried that cameras couldn't be there to film you getting a doctor's appointment? Andy asks if he brought any records to this interview, and he says no, of course. Andy brings up a video on Radar Online where Brooks admitted he cheated on Vicki with prostitutes. Then he followed it up not long after with an interview that he had cancer. He says his exes were pissed at him because he broke up with them, so they said that he lied because they were jealous and they're bitter. One of these women is the mother of his children too, and this is how he's talking about them. What a class act. He later then did 2 different interviews with E! Entertainment, and it was mostly more of the same BS. He did 1 interview before the reunion aired, and I believe with that E! interview, the interviewer says Newport Imaging publicly stated that they would be suing Brooks for fraud. His response was he hadn't heard anything about that, and don't believe everything you read. Okay, because a medical facility is going to put out a fake story about them suing you. He also told the interviewer that he had been stage 3, but with treatments, he was down to stage 2. And then the second interview sit down with E! after the union, they revealed that a rep from City of Hope told E! they never treated anybody by his name. Brooks had also given them documents that he claims came from City of Hope's health portal, bills, stuff from his insurance, way more than he ever provided to everybody on the show, even Vicki, it seems. They asked him about some of the things with Shannon, and he says, well, you only saw 1 page of mine. They asked about his previous documents versus Shannon's, and he said, well, you only saw 1 page of mine. And they didn't even really zoom in on Shannon's. She then asked Brooks if he had gone back to his doctors about that document and was like, hey, why does this document look weird? And he said he had another scan and it looks different than that one. Interesting. They then also confront Brooks with their research with the American Cancer Society. And Brooks had stated in an interview with them that he was stage 3, but now he was at stage 2 cancer. And according to the American Cancer Society, and she said this to him, it says that the stage does not change over time or regress. So if it's stage 3, it's always stage 3. Even if it shrinks or goes away, if it were to reoccur, it would be stage 3. He says that he misspoke, of course. I haven't looked into this myself, though, and I'm not an oncologist, so I'm just going off of what the interviewer said. They also confront him on his inconsistencies with his timeline. Like, he couldn't remember when he had been diagnosed, like what month, and he just goes with whatever E! News says. She then asked him a lot about his drinking, and he just brushes it off, saying it was for friends, his travel dates versus his chemo, and should he even be traveling? He was like, oh, I don't have a calendar right now. I don't know specific dates, but he did go against doctor's orders by traveling. Towards the end of the interview is when he gives the interviewer like the documents. Brooks says the interviewer can speak to his doctor privately on the phone, but they also ask him to do a lie detector test, and Brooks declines. After this interview, they were able to analyze the records that he provided, and they said it looked like these were all forged documents, that these were fake. After they showed that it was forged, he spoke with People magazine, and he admitted to forging the documents because he didn't want to show his real medical documents, so he made fake ones. No, dude, it's because you don't have real medical records. So I think I was right when I said that he went to that one doctor and showed that doctor that medical record to see if he could get it past that doctor. He thought he could get it past other people. Brooks says he did have cancer, but he faked medical records. Like, what's the point of that? Because the medical records that he's allegedly showing people are supposed to be supporting this cancer diagnosis that he allegedly has real medical records of. So if the fake records are saying the same thing as the real records, why are you even going through a process of making fake records? Because you're full of shit. Especially considering one of these fake documents was about masses in his abdomen that he maintained was real, and then he went and got treatments and these shrank. Like, why would you make fake documents about real life things? It looks like he's even faked bills. He even made fake invoices. He makes no sense at all. This guy is trying really hard to cover his tracks. Vicki also did do a one-on-one on like Watch What Happens Live, and I only watched like bits and pieces where he like lied to her and she said that she was duped. Basically, she's starting her apology tour. She did share Don's reaction to all this was that he was very hurt, and he told Brianna like, what the hell, your mom got duped. He doesn't talk to Vicki, but he still does talk to Brianna, and Vicki says that she tries to reach out to Don, but he never responds. I think that Vicki deeply regrets not nurturing her marriage to Don. The thing about marriages is you do have to work on them, and you always have to work and maintain them. You always have to water your grass. You can't just ignore your marriage for a period of time and then, try and water it to see if it grows. It's gonna die. And that kind of like wraps this all up. I think Vicki did file a restraining order on Brooks, and she said she was gonna sue him for fraud, and because she paid to get his like teeth fixed and she bought him all this stuff. But it's mostly in the past now, as the show is going to be starting season 19 soon. And while Vicki's not in the show anymore, she still does appear as Frenza from time to time, although I don't know if she will after she's been saying some stuff on her podcast that Bravo and Andy might not like. But she was on the show for a really long time, and she was one of the longest showrunners. But honestly, I can't ever think of Vicki and not think of Brooks and think about all of this. It was very much a defining moment on reality TV, at least to me, and really showed the lengths that people will go for fame and attention and a casserole, because that's also what Vicki wanted, was sympathy and a casserole. And she did get a casserole seasons later. Anyway, that is it for today's video podcast. I don't know what to call these because it's like both things, but we're just gonna go with it. If you liked this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you next time. Laters. Bye.